Welcome to the Full Advisor Coaching Podcast with your host, Kristin Harad. Kristin, good to be with you. How are you?
I'm good, Bill. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm great. I always enjoy this podcast because I'm fascinated by growth and the things that it takes to manage it, instigate it, and sustain it. And that's what you're all about, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, absolutely. And growth kind of in the just the whole life picture. And one of the things that I know it matters to advisors is like being able to do the kind of work that they want to do.
Yep.
And then also to have some free time, for goodness sakes, to get out and enjoy their lives. So the gentlemen I am welcoming today are going to really shine light on another way that RIA leaders and advisors can add to the mix on their team to be able to free up more of their time, take some of the things off their plate, and be able to do the energy producing work that they like, and also hopefully have a little more free time. So I'm excited to welcome our first two guests on our podcast.
Woo!
We've never done two guests, so this is exciting. We have Mario Nardone and Eric Stein who are partners with East Bay Investment Solutions. And these two CFA charter holders will surprise you because they're a lot more fun than it sounds when you hear that. And I have known them for a few years now, and we've kind of cross-referenced a few clients here and there, and we've worked with some of the same people. So it's exciting to bring them out here. And I just want to welcome you both to the Full Advisor Coaching Podcast. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Kristin.
Yeah. So tell us just at a high level, what the services you help advisors with, and then we'll get into just kind of talking about some of your observations and what you've seen from RIAs who are looking to grow.
Why don't you take this one, Mario?
Okay. All right. So in a nutshell, the outsourced CIO model is essentially for RIAs that would like to have a chief investment officer on staff, but either they don't have quite enough of a workload, they don't have the revenue to be able to hire a seasoned professional in that role, or a host of other reasons. So we exist so that those firms can have a solution that's custom fit to them and allows us to do the kinds of investment research that supports the financial planning process. The planners are confident that the work is being done diligently by professionals that are solely focused on investments. And then they can focus on growing their business, running their business, delivering financial planning, and just cultivating those relationships with their staff and their clients. Anything to add, Eric?
I think you nailed it.
Yeah.
And what was the second part of the question?
Well, no, I was just saying, like, in general, I was going to queue up for us to talk about, like, I know that you provide this outsourced chief investment officer role, but that you also end up doing a whole lot of other things for your advisors. So we're going to get into that as well. But typically, as you're working with clients, I found this fascinating from the first time I talked to you, Mario, when I was like, oh, I didn't even think that would be something you could outsource, right? But it makes a lot of sense, because I know when I was a financial planner, I was not interested in the specifics of, staying on top of investment research or investment models and those types of things. In fact, I only had a planning practice for that very reason, whereas, that comes with its own faults in that you're not then offering something that your audience may actually benefit from. So I find it fascinating that this exists. And I'm curious, just in general, like, if I, as an RIA leader, were coming to you and let's say I have 300 million under management, right? And I come to you, what is it? How does that relationship work? Like, what is it like to work with you? How do you approach that?
Yeah, I'll tackle that, Mario. And I think it's important to realize too, when you talk about outsourcing, Kristin, I think a lot of people incorrectly assume that they're also outsourcing discretion or control.
Good point.
Working with
Okay.
us, you still have control, you still have decision-making power. We're essentially your consultant. So we're going to be doing the heavy lifting for you, but it's not like you are outsourcing everything. It's not like you don't have a choice in what models you use or what managers or ETFs you're using, or what your allocations are going to look like. You very much have a say. We just do a lot of the heavy lifting for you so that you don't have to think about what it looks like. We're going to give you what we think are the best solutions. You certainly always have the ability to ask questions and challenge it, but again, you're not the one having to go out and do all the work yourself, which is really where the outsourcing part is most valuable.
That sounds like you come back, we set up and tell you what our needs are and what we're looking for. And then you kind of give us a menu of options and then say, here's, we've kind of curated or called down all of, the information out there to come back to you to say, this is what we recommend. And we can help advise you on implementing this solution. Is that correct?
That's 100% correct. And, each client's going to be a little bit different. We're looking for clients that I'll say have a similar investment philosophy as we do, so that we can all talk the same language and have the same sort of belief system at a high level. And that way the advice we're giving and, makes sense to the people that are receiving it. But, not all clients are going to look the same. They're going to have different allocations. They might have different managers. They might have different needs. They'll have clients that have specific needs that we can help them with. So it's really, the gamut of products and services that are out there. But again, let's say you're an advisor and you're interested in direct indexing, which has been, a topic that we've seen a lot in the press lately. As an advisor, you don't have to go out and look at the 10 to 15 direct indexing solutions that are out there to determine which one is right for you. We've already done the work. We know which ones are out there. We know what their minimums are and their strategies are, and we can help you find the one solution that's right for you. You don't have to do that. So it saves just hours of time, and the advisor has more confidence in their ultimate solution.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, to what degree do you get involved, if at all, in working with clients or talking with clients, or is it the end client of the advisor, or is it strictly you are advising the leadership team there?
It's as much or as little as the advisor client wants. We're more than happy to jump on a call with an existing client or a prospective client. Advisors very often send us scenarios to analyze and give our thoughts on how to transition that new prospect from their existing advisor or whatever mess they might have created on their own, and get that into a well constructed strategy. The one thing I wanted to add to that, or to your previous question, is that you mentioned coming to us as a $300 million firm. Well, that doesn't happen overnight, right? So you have been communicating your existing investment strategy, and you have portfolios in place that we're not going to totally upend when you become our client. So we might be making some small changes. We might make changes over time. And along with those changes, we're going to help you with a communication strategy, because we don't want in any way your new relationship with East Bay to make your clients feel like what you were doing before was inferior or incorrect. That's a reason why our clients all look different. We don't require them to just do things the East Bay way. We help counsel them to improve or change as much or as little as they want to do.
Oh, that's a great context for that. And as you're talking through that, I'm curious, at what point, or what are the sort of trigger events or problems that arise for an RIA where they might say, hey, I think we're ready. I think we need to look for a solution here. Like, what is it that makes someone feel like this could be right for us?
Yeah, I'd say there are two key ingredients that generally fit the clients that are coming to us. One is time. Time is an advisor's most valuable commodity. It's all of our, frankly, most valuable commodity. And if you're the head of a $300 million RIA, you're CEO, you might be acting as the CIO, you're dealing with compliance, marketing, prospecting, dealing with your current client stack, maybe hiring other, junior people. You've got a lot on your plate. You just don't.
I'm already tired hearing that list.
Exactly.
Going,
exactly. It's
okay.
exhausting, right? It's
Yeah.
there's a lot to do as the head of an RIA. and you just don't have enough time. So if you can look at your world and say, okay, if I can get help with the reviewing new investments, if I can get support on what I want to do with alternative investments, if I can have somebody look at my capital market assumptions and help me understand that they're okay, and I can use them in my planning tools. If there's someone there that can answer my client and prospect questions when they email me in the middle of the night and I don't know how to answer them from an investment perspective. If you're looking for all of those things to help take time out of your day and go back to the things that you really enjoy and want to do, that's a great reason to reach out to us and have a conversation. The other one's just peace of mind, just knowing again that you have 2 CFA charter holders who have been CIOs of firms before, are focused on investments, just helping support and look after your shop. So knowing that, again, we're looking at your investments, we are following the markets, we're investigating new products. Again, all of those things that you probably don't have the time to do, that we're doing it. It just helps the advisor's peace of mind. And frankly, it helps the clients too. One of the questions we always get when we're talking to a new prospect is, what will my clients think that I've outsourced investments? Well, the reality is your clients love it, because they've all often questioned, how as the head of a firm are you doing all of these things? And knowing that they're investing in the firm and investing in the client, by outsourcing their investments to someone like East Bay, your clients absolutely love it.
Yeah, and I know for a fact that it also kind of helps the advisor from a marketing standpoint have a more robust team, right? Like you can literally, I have been working with an advisor team that I know is working with you. And when I first met them, they're like, and we have our CIO, and they mentioned Mario, and I was like, oh, yes, that's part of the team, right? And their outsourced compliance person, part of the team, right? And so when they're presenting to a client, it's like, hey, it's not just me that you're counting on and hoping that I'm, doing okay. It's my whole team, of which the investments is being handled by someone who that's their sole responsibility, which I do think gives a ton of peace of mind for a client, especially as, the firm is growing and people are being introduced to they might start being introduced to a junior advisor who's now supporting the senior advisor. And they're kind of like, well, who's watching out for my money? So I think that's fascinating, that all of these fractional options exist, right? I've done fractional CMO work, same thing. Like people come in and you have part-time, it's like just adding a little bit, but there's something about a CIO who's watching the investments that makes, I don't know, a certain level of comfort for not just the advisor, but the client too.
Yeah, it's also great from a competitive advantage standpoint, because if you're, again, a $300 million advisor in a large city and you're competing against, a dozen other advisors that are the similar size that don't have a chief investment strategist or an OCIO, again, it's just another way to differentiate your practice and show additional expertise that your competitors may not have.
Right. I'm curious, if you could, it's still somewhat nebulous. Can you give us like an example of a client story of like how someone engaged with you, what you've done for them, how you've helped them? You don't have to use names. I just want to, I want to understand scenarios.
I thought of a good one. You mind if I take this?
Sure, go ahead.
So this was a firm that was established a few decades ago, and this RIA owner was ready to retire. He had brought 2 family members into the organization that were going to be his succession plan, and he was an investment guy. He loved picking mutual fund managers and doing all that homework. Well, the next generation were financial planners, and they didn't want to pick up that torch and run with it. It really wasn't their expertise. So rather than trying to wing it, they brought us on board. And over the course of many months, we have been whittling down the old way of doing things and establishing a new way of doing things that the second generation is much more comfortable with. And they're able to focus on financial planning. We did a huge communication strategy that involved the patriarch, basically passing along his trust into us. and the clients didn't miss a beat. So it was a whole transition of a firm's investment program, but they're now in a place where they're confident that the investments are being looked at, and the philosophy is a fit with what they believe in and what's good for their clients.
I love that example, because a lot of the people who are tuning into this podcast are really that developing that version 2 of the RIA, right? So and in some of the scenarios, it is, and kind of commonly, that founder retiring and this next generation stepping in as like, okay, a lot of those founders were raised in the time where it was like very investment focused, very driven by investments and how are you structuring a portfolios and what are you putting the money in? Whereas the planning element has, really come to fruition as being one of the differentiators and having a bit more whole life perspective for this next generation of planning. So to your point, these patriarchs or matriarchs, depending on what the firm situation is, who have come in and said, okay, I've worked with a few firms where they've been passing within the family down to the next generation, or even just, they've been nurturing and raising an advisor who's been with them for a while. It's just a different service offering overall. So I imagine having someone help you with that transition in the investment side, while you're also trying to transition and build credibility, saying, hey, you're no longer going to work with the person you've been working with for the last 20, 30 years, or the person who founded the firm. You're really helping to infuse a little freshness, excitement, ownership to that next generation. And I really love that element. That's a great example.
And if I could add to that example, Kristin, not only are we helping that next generation of owners, but if you're an advisor and you're hiring junior advisors, younger financial planners or people that are newer to your firm, whether they're junior or not, we can also help support their investment knowledge of what the firm is doing. So it's educational from our perspective, where we can take that new advisor off to the side and say, here's how we developed your firm's investment strategy. Here's how we think about it. Here's how we talk about it and communicate it to your clients. Here's all the history that you might want to know. So when they come on board, the owner doesn't have to spend as much time talking about the investments, again, freeing up their time to grow their firm. We can talk with those new advisors about all things investment related. So there's lots of different things we can do with, new employees or new generational folks coming on board. It's just a lot of, again, freeing up time for the advisor to focus on what they do best.
I think I hear a collective, thank God. Yeah, kind of like, I just imagine them being like, and now I have to teach the next person how to do it too. Because I know a lot of advisors, they want, they know they need to add advisors and they know they need to bring on junior people, and they just are like, how am I going to train them? How am I going to do it? So there's so many parts of that, and to have at least, a portion of that taken off their plate where they can be like, look, we're going to handle investment philosophy and this element for you. Do you sit on investment committees then for the RIAs? Like, is that common? Like, you're pretty much running them, or are you in lieu of an investment committee? How does that happen? What happens there?
Yeah, so we have monthly calls with our clients that I would call, our monthly investment committee call. So most of them are run by us. We have maybe one or two that are run by other folks that we're a part of, and that's totally fine as well. For all of those calls, again, we take all the notes. So we have, one document that shows all the conversations that we've had over time, who's participated, what we've talked about, what was decided in the rationale, which is great. So again, just taking time off the advisor's plate. And I'll reference that document fairly frequently with some of our clients. They'll say, we did this back in 2019. Do you remember why we did it? Well, let's just go look at the notes. And it's all right there for us to remember why we made a certain decision or didn't make a certain decision. So it's really helpful to have. I think just going back to your last question about the types of clients we get, certainly changing of generational folks is one. Just to give you another example, the other example is firms that are just looking to grow. Again, you only have so much time in the day. If I can focus on growth, one of my first clients, he would be the first person to tell you he's tripled in assets since we started working together. And
Oh.
he'll say, you know, I've tripled in assets. I can't necessarily point to any specific client that I brought on specifically because I have the East Bay relationship, which on the surface wouldn't sound like a resounding compliment to what we do. But he very quickly goes on to say, listen, I couldn't have gotten to where I am without you guys. I've been able to go after larger clients. You've been able to help me prospect. You've been able to help me have better client conversations. You've been able to support me in so many different ways and give me so much guidance and support. I wouldn't have been able to grow the way I have without you. So to us, that's just a major and massive compliment.
Yeah, that's incredible. And that's really, I think when we look at this kind of, I think it's Michael Kitces who calls it kind of the messy middle, that group of people who are like, you know, they're maybe in 1 million to like 7 million in revenue, or like, you know, that kind of piece where you 100 million under management, 500 million under management, getting a, you know, toward $1 billion. It's like, how do we handle it all? They kind of get stuck in the middle. And I know along the lines of not just having the generation passed down, but also there's the advisors who have really hustled and built, you know, started from scratch, built the firm to, you know, they've hit their 100 million under management, or they, you know, they've gotten into SEC registration, all those types of things. And they're like adding a few people here and there, and they're really setting their sights on, you know, I want massive growth, but I also and this is kind of what Full Advisor is about, I don't want to surrender my whole life just to make that happen. So it's kind of this balance of like, how do I keep myself fulfilled in what I'm doing by meeting with clients, doing the planning, whatever the elements are that you as a leader in the firm. For some people, it is nurturing and developing the people in the firm and developing the younger advisors. Whatever it is that the RIA leader loves doing within the firm, that can be compromised if they aren't bringing in enough help. And so I do see this as not just like looking at various outsourcing. We always talk about different ways to get help when you're in this phase that you're like, we can't fully bring on a CIO. We can't fully bring on a CMO. We can't fully bring on a COO. Like, how do we get through this without sacrificing time with the family, time out of the office, time doing what we care about, so we're not burnt out by the time we do reach where we want to get to, right? So I'm sure that's something you see, and it's that story you told is really sort of testament to the value that, you know, ultimately you can bring to an RIA, and that's pretty exciting stuff. So. And
yeah, I think what
knowing,
you're talking about there is an owner who has, you know, a mindset that this is an investment in their firm, not an expense, right? They recognize that to bring on a 25-year industry veteran with a CFA charter is going to require giving up a lot more salary. There might be an ego involved. They might have to give up equity in their firm. So we try to, you know, our solution avoids all of that stuff.
Oh, that's a very interesting point too on that. And I think and so I have a question about, like, is there a certain point at which a firm kind of moves out of the OCIO system, like where they're like, we can go it alone now? I know that doesn't, you're like, no, we don't want that to happen. I'm like, I'm sure there's at some point where it does make sense to bring someone in-house. I was just curious what you might see.
You know, I think the one that I can think about is the fact that we're outsourced, we're scalable to an extent, means that we can't spend 20 hours a week with any given client, right? Because it crowds out our ability to provide the service to all the firms that we work with. So if an advisor starts to feel like they want their CIO in on every client meeting, or they want to have more, you know, evaluation of all the alternative investments in the universe, and they just really need more than what an outsourced solution can be, that would be a time when they would graduate to in-housing their investment solutions.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful to get that context. This is kind of a non sequitur, but you have mentioned helping with alternative investments. I'm curious what that, like, can you give an example of what that might look like when an advisor's like, dealing with that situation and how you help?
Yeah, so
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
it's simple things, Kristen, like, I shouldn't say simple, but it's things like private equity, private credit, private infrastructure, things like that. And, clients just have questions. It could be, I'm curious about, what is the difference between private equity and public equity? It could be that they're reading about, some of the returns of like venture capital and they want to have potentially similar returns. So it really just depends on what the client is looking for. We can help them find certain investments. We have various partners that we work with that have curated lists available of alternative investments that we can introduce and show to the clients. So it really just depends upon what they're looking for, but it's just really to talk about markets outside of the public markets that we're all very familiar with.
Right. That's what I was
I'll
curious.
just add to that. It's
Oh, go ahead,
no,
Mario.
go ahead. Well, just a scenario that came up just this morning. This was an advisor that we've worked with for about 4 years. And they're like Eric was saying, interested in learning about alternatives. But all of a sudden, one of their clients is expecting a major windfall of about $10 million. And there's another prospective client with a similar level of wealth. So today's conversation was 100% about what types of options exist for folks with that level of wealth, and how can we build an alternative investment program? What are the pieces that fit together well on overlaying their public, equity and fixed income exposure? And so it was just that. It was an understanding that not necessarily that if you want to move up market, you have to use alternatives, but when investors have different levels of wealth, it makes sense to at least explore all the new options that are available to them. And if they don't, and if the client happens to be interested in that kind of stuff, they're going to go somewhere that has that capability and an interest in expanding their opportunity set.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because I've had just a few case studies where advisors are, they are attracting in maybe a ultra high net worth individual, or they have that situation where they might have a clientele that's used to, say, investing in things like real estate or non-market related items, or they're curious about private equity. And so I imagine as an advisor, if you're primarily focused on planning and maybe you used more of a passive investment strategy, or, stuck with the traditional markets, it could be a place where it could require a lot more work and energy on your part to be able to even entertain the conversations with your clients, let alone offer a solution if that's something, if you are repositioning, or, a lot of people coming in, when I'm working with them, they might be repositioning a little more up market. And so as you do that, you might start to attract in more high net worth. And so I imagine the questions come up often. And I'd be remiss not to mention, I'm sure you had to deal a lot with crypto too, as it came up. How did you handle that? And this is more my own curiosity, like, did you help advisors navigate that conversation?
Of course, yeah, it's an investment related conversation, and it's one we are expected to help with and one we were happy to help with. So, our role in crypto is really to do our best job to understand what it is, what it isn't, and to have a conversation with clients. Is it actually a currency? Is it, how is it regulated if it's regulated? What is the difference between a cryptocurrency and, something like the dollar, an actual reserve currency? So just trying to define these things for clients and advisors to help them understand the landscape, and to provide, value at the end of the day in terms of giving them the talking points and comfort they need in order to have that conversation confidently. Ultimately, we view crypto as more speculative than an investment. So we actually don't recommend crypto in our client portfolios. But if a client were to say, hey, I really need crypto, I really want crypto, we're going to help the advisor find what we think is the most appropriate way to actually get access to it, but, without necessarily recommending it ourselves. So again, we can be flexible. We don't have to be hardline and say, nope, we don't want it, so we'll never ever talk about it again. Again, our job is to support the advisor and really help them with their end clients at the end of the day.
Right, because at the end, if they decide that they are okay with letting a client, recommending to a client that they have a portion in a speculative investment, you're just saying that's, you've stated your point of view and your recommendation, and you're facilitating how they may be able to get the help they need on that, but
Yep.
not necessarily endorsing that path, which is, no, I think that's interesting and something that, again, I think it's only going to come up more over, in the coming years and decades as we look at all kinds of different things arising. And I imagine having someone on your team who can, put the legwork in, get out and find out and demystify these things for advisors who already have plenty on their plates.
Yep.
Makes a big difference.
Yeah, the best analogy I can give, Kristin, is really a toolbox. If you're a handyman, you've got a toolbox, and you're probably a few tools you're using most regularly. You've got your hammer, your wrench, your screwdrivers, what have you. It's the same thing with an advisor. They're using the same tools for the most part for most clients. They're using mutual funds, ETFs, maybe some CDs. Their models are going to look similar across their client base. But there are going to be times when they need another tool. They might need an alternative investment. They might need an individual, bond. They might need an SMA. They might need something ESG related. And rather than having to go out and figure out how to work that tool or what the best tool is to fit that, our role is really to help them do that. So we have access to those resources. We've, reviewed a lot of those resources, and then our job is to help impart our knowledge and wisdom and what we've learned to those advisors so they can support their clients.
That's fantastic. Very well said. I, of course, would be remiss if I did not. This is, the podcast very focused on fulfillment and how do we live whole, fulfilled lives. And I know enough about each of you to know what fulfills you, but sometimes I get surprised. So I'd love to hear, Mario, what fulfills you?
Oh, we're going outside the office now, right?
I'm saying you can go wherever. Yes. Outside the office is way more interesting. We know what you'd like for work. So we've got a good sense of that.
I'm a relatively new dad to two young kids, 4 and 2. So I definitely get some fulfillment when I get to spend time with them, and especially when they're not misbehaving or hitting each other with things or throwing rocks at each other. And we're actually fortunate enough to be able to go on a little vacation down Saturday. So I'm looking forward to that for sure.
Oh, great. Where are you going to go?
We're going to an all-inclusive in Cancun.
Wow. That's the way to do it with young kids.
Yep.
Just show up and have fun, and there'll be a lot of swimming, I'm sure. Running around, and some tired kids, which is perfect. That's great. Right. Eric, what's fulfilling to you?
Yeah, so I'm a little jealous of Mario having young kids. I feel like it was yesterday that my kids were young, and now they're 18 and almost 21. So, I'm fulfilled now because I've got my older one back from school. So I've got them both in the house, which is kind of nice. I'll be an empty nester in a few months. So that's a very different scenario for my wife and I. So we're kind of curious to see what that's going to be like. But I've been trying to find, frankly, some new hobbies because of the more time I have now. So I've always been into cycling. I get on the bike as much as I can. And I've been trying some new things. I've been trying pickleball. I've been trying to find more time to volunteer and do some other things. So it's really just, I've got this abundance of time outside of work now that I never really had before when the kids were younger, and even more recently when I've been following one to sports and all the other stuff. So gonna look at my newfound freedom in a few months and figure out how to have some more me time that I really haven't had in a long time.
Ooh, that's an exciting place to be, and full of opportunity. So that'll be fun to try out all kinds of things. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. So how is it that advisors who are listening today, they're like, wow, this sounds really interesting. How can they find you?
Yeah, very easy. Go to eastbayis.com. You'll find our website. If you scroll down on the main page, you'll find the quiz that we spoke about earlier. So you can go directly to the quiz and see if OCIO is right for you. We also have a Let's Talk button on our several places on our website, which goes directly to my calendar. So feel free to book some time if you're curious to learn more. You can always email us at eric@eastbayis.com or mario@eastbayis.com. And of course, you can find us on LinkedIn as well. So lots of places to find us.
Great, great. And the quiz that Eric mentioned, we're going to have a link to it in the show notes, but it's really, it's a quiz to just, it takes a few minutes, you answer a few questions, and it really states whether or not, you're in a position where you're ready for an OCIO. So it's the OCIO readiness quiz. So that's
Exactly.
fun. You can go in there and take that, see what you think. And maybe now's the right time, maybe later, but you'll be able to get a quick assessment there. So thank you guys so much for joining me today. I love when I get to run into you. I'm sure I'll see you at a conference again soon. I know the last conference I went to, I think I ran into Eric at the gym.
Yep.
That was good fun. So I can say that, yes, he does like to bike. I've seen him there, and I think, Mario, I saw you at that same conference. So hopefully again this year we'll cross paths in person. But until then, thanks so much for coming today. I really appreciate having you on and having you share your knowledge and expertise with my audience.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
It was a very good conversation, a really interesting conversation. And before we end this whole podcast, Kristin, for people who are listening to the podcast thinking, I'd like to talk to her, how do people get a hold of Kristin Harad?
That's a good point too. You can go to fulladvisorcoaching.com. We have the website there, all kinds of free resources. You can access all the podcast episodes. You can get to the blog. There's some free downloads. And I'm often on LinkedIn, so feel free to reach out there if you haven't connected with me there. But go to the website, take a look. And if you want to have a call, you can hit the request a call button, and we can have a conversation and see what might work for you.
Yeah, that'd be great. The other thing you could do, listeners, if you are not a subscriber already, is you could do something really simple. Just hit the follow button, become a subscriber. That way, when Kristin drops a new episode of this podcast, you'll be notified. You can listen to it. The other thing that I would ask is that if you enjoy this podcast, if you find it useful, if you find it interesting, share with other people. Tell people about it. Word of mouth is a very welcome promotion, kind of piece of promotion, and we'd appreciate it. Until next time, I'm Bill Tucker. On behalf of Kristin, thanks so much for listening. And I'd like to remind you that you can go out today and make today a great day or not. It's your choice. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time.